ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Cage Talk. Today we have UFC veteran, fought in the UFC World Series of Fighting, fought in XFC, was Ultimate Fighter Season 2. We have the People's Warrior. We have Josh Burkman. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on. I forget about some of that stuff till you remind me about it. It was a long career.
You know what? That's funny because you're not the only person that actually told me that. They're like, man, I think I was talking to Chris Lieben and I was mentioning some of the stuff, and he's like, man, just some of the stuff that you said like kind of brings back memories, and that's one of the things I wanted to do. You know, just again, you had a stellar career, regardless if it was in the UFC or if it was outside the UFC, and
right.
I mean, you helped pave, this sport, and that's the best way I could do is give back to the MMA communities by talking and bringing you onto the channel. So again, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, of course, no doubt. Lieben, man, I trained with him way back when in Oregon, and I think that's half the reason we forgot stuff from back then is because the way we sparred back then.
Definitely, it was wing it, man. It was just winging it, especially those sparring.
Yeah, the Team Quest days. I mean, me, Chris Lieben, Ed Herman, Randy Couture, Chael Sonnen. I mean, Matt Lindland, that room was the best room I'd ever been in. So
definitely. I mean, he was talking about how he's like, yeah, I was one of the people on Team Quest. I mean, I remember he's like, my brother called me saying Matt Lindland and Randy Couture were kicking the crap out of each other. And he was like, I'm in, man. I'm in. So it's just to hear stories like that, man.
Yeah, I remember they were in a garage in the back of a car sales lot that ended up being what Team Quest was,
Definitely.
So I showed up and was like, this is the gym, huh? Okay, let's go.
That's it,
there
man.
Was more sweat and blood in that room in a vicious way than any other room, man. But it was such a brotherhood that was created, and we all made it. You
Definitely.
know.
And it's such a good group of guys too, like Ed Herman, Matt Lindland, Chris Lieben, and also Randy Couture. So again, it was a good group of guys. Chael. Oh,
shit talking, very humble. Chael.
Yeah, it was funny. I met Chael. Where was it? It was in Vegas. I met him, and I was like, man, is he still the same character, off screen that he is? Like, and I was like, you know what? So I went to go see him, and this is when he was gonna have the Vanderlei Silva fight, the second one. And I'm like, hey, man, I'm like, good luck on your fight. He's like, yeah, and I'm going to win just like I did last time. I was like, oh, that is perfect. I'm like, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, Shell's good people, man. But I love what he did with his smack talk and entertainment, too, and it got him a long way,
It really did. And
a career in broadcasting and everything.
And he's pretty good at what he does, man. He's very good at speaking, and again, when I started this YouTube page, man, it was kind of hard because, again, it was weird talking. Not that I'm not bad at talking to people, but it's different when you're having an interview or a conversation with someone. You have to like kind of intake what they're saying and still continue that conversation. And I mean, Chael does it to like the T. And I stumble on my words and I do this and I do that. So it's a learning process, man. It's a learning process.
So far, so good. So far, so good.
There you go, man. All right, let's talk about your career, man. Again, like I said, you fought in the UFC. You came out of the UFC. You went to the World Series of Fighting. Then you jumped back to the UFC. I mean, you had a couple of organizations that you fought with. Now, when you first started, you were in high school. You played multiple sports, right? You were a baseball player and a football player.
Yeah, so I wrestled. I played football and I played baseball in high school, and those were kind of like and basketball was actually my favorite sport.
Really?
So I played basketball up until I was a sophomore, and I played on the varsity team when I was in 9th grade. But my wrestling coach in high school came to me and was like, "Why are you playing basketball? You're 5'10" white guy." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Are you gonna wrestle or play basketball?" I was like, "Well, I want to play both." And he was like, "No, you need to wrestle." He's like, "I heard you like to fight." He's like, "You need to make sure you keep wrestling." And he had me come into his classroom and he showed me a wrestling video of Matt Hughes at Iowa, and then in a couple of these UFC fights.
Okay.
And I was like, "I'll see you at wrestling practice." And that was during baseball season, but that was what that's what helped me make the choice to be a wrestler in high school, which is really my, original background in martial arts and what I initially started my professional fight career with just wrestling training,
Definitely.
Yeah. And then
I,
I played baseball and football in college. And then I was transferring from Dixie State to the University of Utah on a full ride scholarship.
okay.
And I had my first fight. It was an NHB fight.
Okay.
That that summer transferring,
Mm-hmm.
and after I fought, I was like, "Oh, I'm doing this for the rest of my life." And I
You're
dropped
hooked.
out of school, gave up my scholarship, and and became a professional fighter. And that's how it started.
There you
And
go,
then for
man.
17 years, I was able to make a living and do nothing else but fight. And I lived a dream. No matter what it was, I was able to just fight for 17 years and just train martial arts. I feel like it was a blessing for sure.
Definitely, man. And again, 17 years, that especially putting your body through, those workouts and training. I mean, that takes a toll on your body, man. But again, um, you were awesome. Like I said, you were awesome in the cage. Loved everything about you. And you do have one fight that I want to talk about later on, where this is the John Finch, the second one, because that one to me, man, that no one's seen that fight. I mean, that was probably the most badass fight ending ever. I mean, you were the fighter and the ref, and you told them when the fight was over, which it was super cool, man. It was really cool.
Well, that was probably the peak of my career. You know what I mean? And it happened in a very like cool way, and for me, when I first fought John Fitch back in the UFC in 2007, I was the top 10 fighter in the world, and John Fitch was the guy trying to make a name for himself.
Definitely.
I had just beat Drew Fickett, who was number 7. I had just beat Sam Morgan,
Mm-hmm.
and Fickett had just come off a win over John Fitch, or not John Fitch, Josh Koscheck.
Yep.
Josh Koscheck was highly touted, and then I went and submitted Drew Fickett in minute and 41 seconds, and so I was like, I'm the best, bring it. And, before I fought Fitch, 3 weeks out, I broke my foot.
Okay. So
I was like, I'm going to beat this dude no matter what, whether I can move or not. That's just where I was at in my career at 26 years old and where I was at.
Mentality,
and I lost that fight. And then I was kind of up and down after that, because I was partying every bit as much as I was an MMA fighter, like we were living a rock star lifestyle too,
Yeah, you know it.
And but then I got injured.
Mm-hmm.
And at 29, I had really bad herniated discs and some bad neck injuries. And the doctors told me my career was over and I should retire. And so I did. At 29, I retired, and I didn't want my career to be over. I worked really hard on different kinds of healing modalities. I got to work with a lot of healers and professionals and psychiatrists, sports psychologists, that kind of stuff. And I was able to get cleared by the doctors without getting surgery, that I was able to come back. And before that, if I would have had to retire then, I would have had a lot of regret, because I for sure think I could have been the best fighter in the world and a world champion, if I wouldn't have had all those extracurricular activities in my life,
Yeah.
And so then, being able to come back and being able to like be better than I had ever been.
Mm-hmm.
When I got to fight John Fitch, it was like, if I can beat Fitch, I'll be better than I ever was. And if I can get over this neck injury and be better than I ever was, I'll have no regret and I'll have no resentment. And I'll be able to let fighting go and move on to what's next in my life.
Gotcha.
And so that's, I think, what that moment was with John Fitch is I got to get my career back. I got to get back into a place where I got to fight the number 3 fighter in the world. And I had no doubt in all my interviews, I'm like, I'm going to beat this dude in the first minute of the first round. Like, he has no chance. And all my interviews, I would say that leading up to this fight. Mm-hmm. And then when I tapped him out in 41 seconds, I just, was like, he's out. I'm going to roll him over and let everybody know this is over. And I rolled him over and put my hand up, and that was probably that for me completed the comeback in a sense for me. and gave me a lot of clarity. And like I said, that was the best moment in my career for sure, because of what it meant for me and coming back from injuries and where I was at in my career and in my life at that point. And Fitch had a lot of people watching him because he had just got let out of the UFC, said he could beat anybody. And I was like, no, I'm better than anybody in the world right now, bro. I'm going to prove it.
It was when you locked it on, you already knew he was out. That's why you flipped him over. It was done.
Yeah,
it was a weird position for the ref, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't a traditional guillotine. It was like a DDT.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I locked his neck, I cranked him, and I slammed his head into the mat. And he was disoriented when his head hit the mat.
And then,
who was it? Jake the Snake Roberts used to hit the DDT, right?
Yep.
And everybody's always, even Boss Rutan's like, oh, he shouldn't have put him in the half guard. And I'm like, no, that ain't the guillotine you guys are thinking. That's more catch wrestling. And that's why he was out so quick, is because it was a different kind of a neck crank than just on the esophagus.
Gotcha.
And if I wouldn't have let him go, I could have broke his neck, but I like Fitch. I got nothing but respect for Fitch, and that's why I let it go when I let it go.
I mean, it just shows you're a class act. I mean, and it just, everything fell into place in that fight, right? And
Absolutely.
Again, that's one of I have that picture of you just standing over with your hand. It's just a badass moment. It's like something from a movie, man.
It was, like I said, that was, you see that picture of Ali where he's standing over Liston, first minute, first round. I have that picture in my office forever. And it's like, at some point when I care to put up memorabilia, that picture might replace the Ali one, first minute, first round. You know what I'm saying? So, another interesting story is my wife was pregnant with my second little boy.
Okay.
And we were trying to come up with names, and Atlas Shrugged was mine and my wife at the time's favorite book.
Okay.
And John Fitch, me and him were talking, and we were cool. He's asking me about being a dad, and I think his wife might have been pregnant at the same time, or they were trying to get pregnant.
Okay.
And we were talking about names, and he's like, yeah, I'm thinking about naming my little boy Atlas. And I was like, well, how about this? If I beat you, I'm going to steal that little name, and I'm going to call my little boy Atlas. But if you beat me, I won't take it. And he's like, deal. And we shook hands.
And there you go. That's your second child.
My little boy's name is Atlas.
That's an awesome story. That's cool, man.
Right? So I also appreciate you for helping me name Atlas.
That's awesome, man. And it's just crazy how things unfold, man. Unfold in your very eyes. And
absolutely.
That's a really fascinating story. Again, you started, I know we kind of went the opposite, but it's fine. We started with your most memorable moments. Now, when you started, you're supposed to be in The Ultimate Fighter Season 1, correct?
Yep.
I ended up being in Ultimate Fighter Season 2, which is cool. I mean, it still had a great group. How was that experience?
The Ultimate Fighter was so when I was originally on Season 1, right? I was on, Lieben was on, and they wanted me to fight at 205. So I would have been fighting who was it? Forrest Griffin and those dudes, which I still would have smoked them, but I wasn't training for the Ultimate Fighter. My buddy had just gotten drafted by the Phoenix Suns. He was living in Scottsdale. I was like, yo, I'm coming.
Let's go.
And so, because he was my college roommate too, and we always had dreamed about the moments of becoming professional athletes. And I thought I was going to be a football player. He knew he was going to be a basketball player. And we had bets about who was going to become the athlete first, who was going to buy each other the first cars, So when he got drafted, it was like, I'm coming. And we were partying pretty hard, and that's how it was back then, it was fight, party, train,
Definitely.
And I was in Scottsdale when I got the call, hey, Josh, you're on The Ultimate Fighter. And I was like, oh, okay, I better go home. So I ended up going home, and I had 3 weeks to train. And my buddy was like, I was like, man, I need to get in shape quick. And my buddy was like, you should take some Winstrol. And I was like, yeah, I should for sure.
There it is.
There was, in the early days, there was no tests, it was it was free range. It was different. And when I got there, they told me that they were testing, that they weren't testing us.
Okay.
And then they brought us back just for a test, to test us for steroids. And I tested positive.
Mhm.
But I told them when they tested me, I'm like, yo, listen, I'm going to test positive for cocaine, marijuana, steroids. They're like, well, just take the test. And they're like, what have you been doing? I'm like, not training for a fight. I was like, and that, for me, it's easy. I'm very like clean living, holistic now. And it's easy for me to talk about those things because there's a lot of lessons and things like that in my shortcomings, and as there was with the Ultimate Fighter. So, I packed for Ultimate Fighter 1. I was on my way to the airport, and Craig Peligian called me and goes, you didn't pass your tests. And so I was getting, I told my whole high school football team, I'm leaving. I'm going to be on the Ultimate Fighter.
Oh, wow.
And then I wasn't on. They told me I was off, and I had to go home, and I had to explain to my family. I had to explain to my athletes on the football team, everybody that like, listen, I'm not going because of the choices that I made. And at the time they weren't testing, and I didn't, like I said, it was a different situation, but it was kind of like what really helped, I think, like stabilize the sport and help it grow was like that kind of testing in the UFC, And so I ended up, but Craig called me back and he's like, man, we love you. Like he's like, and if this show's successful and there's a season 2, you're going to be on it, but you need to clean up your act. And he's like, and if nothing else, you should just clean up your act in life in general,
Yeah.
And I did that. I quit drinking, I quit partying for a while. And I really got focused that there was going to be a season 2. And I took a couple more fights, won those fights. They called me up, said there's going to be a season 2. We want you on at 170 pounds. And I was like, let's do it. And then I got to go on. And when we first got there, I was like, okay, there's some tough dudes here.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started training, and I got to train with Melvin and Joe Stevenson, and I threw those dudes around, and Matt Hughes was like, you're going to win the show. He's like, I'm going to pick you to get on my team.
That's awesome.
And that's exactly what happened, except for Melvin broke my arm, and I wasn't able to be, the Ultimate Fighter champ. But I think there's no doubt I would have beat anybody on that show had I had the opportunity to do it, But those were all, like I said, good lessons. And Dana was like, hey, I know you broke your arm. And I fought Melvin Gillard. He kicked me in the arm, snapped. It completely snapped my arm in half in the second round. But I beat him in a decision. And Dana came and got me after and was like, listen, I know your arm's broken. You're not going to be able to compete the show, but go home, get better, and I'll give you an opportunity to get a UFC contract. And that's what happened. I fought Sam Morgan on that finale, beat him in 21 seconds.
Remember that fight?
Yeah, that was a good moment too. Like that was 25-year-old kid getting an opportunity to get a UFC contract, and I put Sam Morgan out in 21 seconds. So that was every bit as equally as cool as the moment of beating Fitch, except for a different kind of reward. You know what I mean? Fitch was more coming back from struggle, coming back from it being over, and Sam Morgan was like, "Nah,
starting off.
Like I deserve this. I'm gonna beat this dude." So yeah, that's kind of how it all started in the UFC. And at that point, I think I had probably like 15, 20 fights, and I retired at the end with 47 fights, so it was a good career and I put in a lot of work over those next 10 years.
Definitely, man. And again, like I said, if it was not in the UFC, it was, World Series of Fighting. I mean, I loved watching you, but there was one point where you grew out your beard. I mean, your beard was intense, man. I mean,
right.
When was that? Because I know I have a picture of you for this show that has as a thumbnail, and it's the only one I could get you, but you have a full-on beard, like.
So when I first got in the UFC, what I would do is for fight camps I would grow my beards out.
Definitely.
And then as soon as I would get done with my weight cut, before we went into weigh, I would shave my face. So I always showed up on the scale with this clean face. Because it's like, the work's over. Now let's just go perform. And that was kind of like my method for years.
Okay.
And then when I came back, I would grow out my beard and I would not shave. And so I started fighting with these beards, and then sometimes I would shave them after the fights. But then there was 2 periods where I was like, I'm just not going to shave until I lose.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of my career, I just grew it out for a year. So it was only a year, but I remember there was a couple times, where I was like, I'm going to shave. No, I'm not. And that last period in the UFC was where it just got gnarly.
Yeah, man, it was crazy. I remember, watching your fights. I'm like, shit, is that him? I'm like, yeah.
And two, it was funny because a lot of people recognize me as the clean face, shaven face. So when I have a beard, people don't always recognize me. But when I shave my face, everybody always is like, "Oh, Burkman." Yeah. But when I have my beard, nobody even. It's like,
that's funny. Well, you can always switch it up when you don't want to be bothered and stuff. Just grow out your beard. You're good to go.
So now, too, I had it for a year, and I shaved it a couple months ago for the summer. And then I just started growing it out again, and I'm going to grow it for 2 years this time. So I'm going to see if but I have a feeling it's going to be like this. So I'm not going to shave for 2 years, and I'm about a week in.
I really want the next. I'm gonna, not that you're not gonna come back on, but when you do come back on, I do want to see you with that beard, man, so we can have a before and after, like the very first time you were on the show, and then now.
And I'll give you like every 6 months. Every 6 months, I'll throw you a shot and be like,
"There we go, man." That's awesome. Now,
but that was always the thought, and I always like the stories of. I'm fascinated with the history of the beards and how the women in Egypt used to like color them on and wear fake ones, and and like the statues of the Greek gods, their beards are long and flowing, and Samson and Delilah, and how he lost his strength, and it's like, I feel like that's part of the things too, is like grow the beard, sometimes through a cleansing, but I really feel like I'm in a period of my life of righteousness and serviceness, and it has to do with martial arts, and I think that's my goal is to serve my students and the people that I'm teaching and help them to become their highest self. And my beard is just a reflection of like the next 2 years is me being a teacher and trying to serve people through martial arts.
Awesome. And now you can tell people what you're doing now. I know you have, you're doing classes and stuff and teaching classes and stuff like that. If you can reflect a little bit on that.
Well, so I really retired from the UFC 2 years ago. And when I retired, I got neck surgery.
Okay.
And they went in and did disc replacement on my C5 and C6. And I didn't know for sure exactly what I was going to do, and luckily I had saved money and given myself some time to try to figure that out. And then a year later, I decided to do one more fight just to come back from my neck surgery and see if I could do it. And I could, and it went good. And, I started teaching about 3 months before that fight, and it just kind of came up but I didn't know that I wanted anything to do with the sport of MMA anymore, and I just didn't know exactly what direction I was going to go. Whether it be a yoga teacher, whether it be a breath coach, a life coach, whatever, I didn't know exactly. And then I started teaching, and I started to really like fall in love with my students and watching them progress in martial arts and deal with like anger issues or anxiety issues and not have those anymore because of the way that we were teaching and doing things, and then I decided that I really wanted to like be a teacher and a coach, And then over the last 6 months ago, I had a guy named Dan Barry who owns a school called Integrated Martial Arts, asked me if I wanted to take his gym over. And it couldn't have been like better timing, period, And so I took that gym over about 6 months ago, and we were really building some steam, and then COVID hit. And then when the COVID hit, I was just like, really what I want to do is I just want to hang out with my kids, And so I started some kids camps, and but part of what I wanted to teach was teach people. When I hurt my neck, I got to go through basically the Nevada Institute of Sports Science did a case study on me about trying to heal the vertebrae in the neck and the nucleus and all this. And we did it through a holistic lifestyle, a raw food diet, breath work, and the optics, right? And it was amazing to me that all this information was out there and yet nobody had ever taught it to me. And so I went and also found, I don't know whether I found them or they found me, but I've found over these last 5-10 years, traditional martial arts teachers that we talked about, like the honor and the virtue in martial arts, and also how that surpasses technique and the life force within the body, and all those things, and so I started teaching martial arts in a more traditional way, and I really was focused on teaching kids. And so now I'm running adult class and kids classes, but we talk about meditation, we talk about breath, we talk about posture, and then how martial arts, yoga, and mobility help in those things. And I've went and got a certified yoga certificate from Budokan, which is a full martial arts system of mobility, yoga, and then all the traditional martial arts, And I've got a mobility certificate, and I think and I also went and got my black belt from Dan Barry. And now we're just, we're doing that. And what we're doing now is we have a 501c3, a nonprofit called Caring for Kids.
Okay.
And my goal in the end is to get martial arts training for kids all over the state of Utah for free. And then we're also have a private school that we're starting where kids are going to come in. We start in September for kids that are being homeschooled, because a lot of kids are going to homeschool now with COVID-19. So basically my goal is to start a modern day Western Shaolin temple where these kids, they come in, and this is what they do now, and this is what they'll do in September, is they come in and we start with meditation and breath work. And after we do the meditation and breath work, we do mobility, animal movements, crawling patterns, which are all basically like animal movements and jiu-jitsu, shadow boxing, right? Different ways of moving without just by yourself, And then after they do that, we play Nerf guns or water guns, and they get to play a little bit. This is my new cat. He just showed up.
There we go. Look at that.
This is Tiger. My boys talked me into getting Tiger the other day.
Oh, there you go, man. No, I did see something on your Instagram. Now, it was something, I don't know if it was what you were doing now, or it was maybe like, it looked like it was almost like a cabin out in the woods.
Right.
What was that about? Because that looked really cool. Because again, there was a big living room. It was just all mats, and it was a bunch of people. I was like, man, that looked cool. And then there was like campfire, and you were making s'mores and shit. I was jealous. I was like, damn, I want to do that.
Right.
What's that about? Is that part of that?
The school where my teacher is, where I've got a lot of my yoga and mobility certifications and things like that, it's called Budokan.
Okay.
Budokon. And Budokan and Budokan University is what the Instagram is. And what Budokan is a mixture between calisthenics, mobility, yoga, and martial arts.
Gotcha.
There's a black belt jiu-jitsu system, which is the Gracie Barra system. And it basically has all those pillars of movement, because the principle of yoga, it's martial arts. It's why it's a sword fight. It's Warrior 1, Warrior 2, Warrior 3. And Cameron Shane is my teacher, and he's the one that has this. He's moved from Montana or from Miami to Montana.
Okay.
And he bought a piece of property there, and they got a retreat center. And really, anybody who's interested in yoga, martial arts, and movement in general should look into it. And it's at the Glacier National Forest, and it's a pretty incredible thing. So you can just look up Budokan and kind of see what that is. And that's what's given me the idea. I've always been a yogi, and I've always been an athlete, and I've always been a martial artist. Well, not always been a martial artist. I was a fighter. Now I'm very much more a martial artist. And that's what I teach is under this Budokan system. And that's what it is. And then that's what we're going to do with these kids too. Where they come in, they do their meditation, then they do their mobility. After they do their mobility, they do their martial arts, and then they do their yoga. And then they go and they grab their computers and they get on the mats and they do 2 hours of their online homework. So they're doing lots of movement. It's a movement school. And then they go and they get their logic, but it's not just logic, because you need to be able to have both those things, and that's what I want to that's what we're after, is to teach people how to move and to teach people how to breathe and to have good posture, because I think that's the rebellion against the society going through what we're going through, putting us in a technological bubble that almost, takes away our freedom. I think that's what's happening, and I want to teach these little humans how to move and be free and have other options besides selling technology and apps, teach them to be the warrior spirit, the martial arts, but not only the warrior spirit, but the yogi also, which is the more peaceful side of us,
Yeah, definitely, man. Again, like I said, I was jealous seeing all your Instagram posts. I'm like, man, like that looks cool. You guys were out in a lake, and I was like, shit, that looks.
Yeah, and that's it, man. Just being more in touch with nature, being more like the samurai, being more like, the just that kind of like warrior. That's, like I said, I think part of our job is to not to be here to use the animals and to use the earth, but to be a part of that and to take care of the animals and to take care of the earth, and
Definitely.
I think that there's definitely a separation that's happening right now in those things, and I just want to. I think the warrior spirit is very much in touch with the laws of nature,
Definitely, man. And again, that's interesting as hell, man. And again, I hope nothing but good fortune, man. So just keep going at it. Again, who wouldn't want to be taught by Josh Burkman? That's cool, man. That's really cool.
Thanks. I think the hardest part too is, for me is transitioning from that role to a fighter, to a teacher and a coach, because I'm not trying to just teach people to get into the UFC. I'm using martial arts to try to teach people how to have health and longevity in their life.
Definitely.
And it's like, oh, who's this guy to teach that? But it's like, man, I've been through so many injuries and so many things I've had to endure that have taught me about the body and about breath work and about just life, and it's like, I feel like martial arts has been like such a spiritual journey that I never knew it would be for me. And now, like I said, I want to just, pass those lessons on to the next generation. And again, like, try to help people heal and try to help people deal with their things so that they can stand with good breath and good posture to go through to endure the things that life gives us.
Your sons go with you?
Yeah. So my sons are pretty much the guides in it. They're like, I don't love school. I don't want to sit in a desk. And then, like I said 2 years, give me 2 years. I'll have school. You don't have to go to school anymore. You can come to our school, our martial arts movement school. But then COVID-19 happened, and 6 months later we got a school. And so I think that's a big part of it is, just, I want my kids to learn the arts. I want them to learn yoga and martial arts and how to breathe. And, I've had kids come in with anxiety. I've had kids come in with, I've dealt with kids with autism. I've dealt with kids with ADHD. And once we teach these kids how to breathe, and once we teach them how to keep their posture, their anxiety goes away, their stress goes away, their ADHD goes away. We don't have ADHD at our gym. As soon as they come in and get to move, their learning problems are gone, because that's all they want to do.
Move.
ADHD is when I say sit in a desk.
Yep.
And do your work and don't move. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have those issues. And our kids, and I think our parents see the benefits of what we're creating in our school for these kids.
That's awesome, man. Again, like I said, you keep going with that. That sounds like you're onto something. And again, I hope everything works out for you. So.
Thanks, man. It's like anything else too, I think fighting, was everybody's like, why are you going to be a fighter? You put so much into football. And I'm like, because it's going to work. Like, and people didn't believe necessarily that it was going to work till it started working. And they're like, best choice ever.
Yeah. Then after it's, oh, you did good, man. Good job.
Yeah. And even being a teacher, I mean, Dana, I had an opportunity to go to Vegas and work for Dana White in the UFC. I had an opportunity to run a unbreakable gym inside the Rio.
Okay.
And make $200,000 a year just showing up running this gym, and I've chose to stay in Utah and to work as a teacher and an instructor and to build this school because I feel like this is my purpose. I think that everything that I've been through has given me the knowledge and the wisdom to be able to teach this stuff that I'm teaching, and I think that there's a growing period, you know, and it's like when I first started, there was one person in class and two people in class, and now we're starting to like grow and build, and it's like anything else. It just takes a period of time, and it takes that consistent work. But eventually, the goal is to have 3 schools and a property in Montana and a retreat center, and just have multiple places that people can learn about the arts of the body and the way to breathe, and places to be in the highest self where it's happy and joyful. And
That's
that's
awesome.
what we're after, you know.
That's awesome. Again, I just want to, just before we wrap it up, I want to say thank you for everything you put inside the octagon and even outside, because that's the most important thing, is not only what you did in your past as a fighter, but, you know, your legacy, what you leave behind now as, you know, your new career starts. And again, giving back to the community, you know, helping out kids and building the school is another great opportunity. And that's awesome. And I want to thank you for that, man.
Well, thanks, man. And like I said, I feel like I had a MMA career that I feel like I could hang my hat on and be good with, you know, but I
agree.
feel like there's just so much more to do. And I said, I hope when I'm done teaching these kids and building my school, people forget I was ever a fighter, and just, you know, look at me as like a great teacher. And that's where I'm headed now. You know, I want to, and like I said, it's going to take a period of time, you know, but eventually I want to be known for being a great teacher, not a great fighter.
Perfect. And again, thank you so much for coming. You're always more than welcome to come back on again with the beard. I want to see that beard, man. So,
we'll come back in a year, and then we'll come back in 2, and eventually I think it'll be off the picture eventually.
That's awesome. But again, thank you so much for everything. Ladies and gentlemen, Josh Burkman. Thank you so much, bud.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem, buddy.